Welcome to Long Run. I'm Joel.
And I'm Christine.
What are we doing today?
Today we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of living in Orlando in 2024. We want to give a little shout out to Dawn from Sensible Living with Money Mom, who did her own version of this. But so that would be pros and cons of living in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So we will link that down in the description so that you can watch that one after you finish watching our version.
All right. Okay. All right. So let's start with the cons. The first one is housing, especially in the area where we live. Housing, the average mortgage in our community, in our little area right here, is $753,000, and that's a lot. And that's not counting that most places you have to pay an HOA fee. Monthly HOA fee in addition to your mortgage. That's usually added into your mortgage, but you have to pay that extra on top of the mortgage that you have. So it's something extra to consider when you're buying a house in this area. Also, property taxes and property insurance have seen huge increases over the last few years. Rent is also expensive. One bedrooms in this area go for $1,500 to $2,000 a month. So when thinking about the cons of living in this area, housing is going to be one of them.
It's going to be probably the biggest one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our next one is going to be transportation. This is a very car dependent area.
Yep.
They have just recently started running public buses to the community that we live in Orlando, and it's still a very you'd have to be on a certain street to get the bus.
It's only a series of buses on one street that runs through this area. So.
Right, so you'd still have to have a way to get to that street.
Yeah.
So it's a very car-dependent area. Either you're going to have to do that one bus and figure out how you're going to get to that street, or you're going to have to do an Uber or Lyft, something like that. In this area just to get around. So yeah, it's very car dependent. In our community, if you are traveling here, on a vacation, there are buses that go from the airport to the different area attractions and stuff, but they're not used for day-to-day life for the locals.
Yep.
So.
All right, so those are the cons. Let's talk about the pros. One of the pros is there's no state income tax.
Woohoo!
Yeah, that's a really good thing. Now we do, like I said, we do pay some higher prices on some taxes, on some other kind of taxes, but there is no state income tax here. So if you're looking for a state that doesn't have an income tax, this is it.
There's also no sales tax on food for groceries.
That's right.
Foods.
Yeah. So
if you buy something else in the grocery store that doesn't qualify as a food, you'll still have a sales tax, but not the actual food.
That's right.
Yeah. The next one for the pros section is the outdoor life. Is really great place to get out in nature, there's an abundance of things to do in this area. There's parks, theme parks, including Disney World, Universal Studios, SeaWorld. All of those are within a 30-minute drive from us. That's all included in the Orlando area, as well as, like I said, the parks. It's also a very short distance to beaches in this area.
Yep.
And so there's an abundance of things that you can do in this area. And as far as affording them, obviously some are more expensive than others. But if you're in Florida, then you likely qualify for Florida resident passes and things like that. That would give you a huge discount. That's how come we're able to do a lot of the Disney World stuff that we do on our other channel, Adventures on the Long Run, is because we do qualify for those discounts as far as being a Florida resident.
That's right. All right, so now we're going to talk about some things that are pros and cons. So they're pros, but they also have some cons that go along with them. And the first one is medical facilities around here. There's a lot of great hospitals, a lot of great clinics in this area. And so, you have a lot of options. Unfortunately, depending on where you get your health insurance from, then you may have to drive a distance. Now, Chrissy gets her. We get hers from the marketplace, and we have to drive out of our way, out of our community to get there, like 20 to 30 minutes to go to a doctor. So we're passing up all the doctor's offices in this area to take her to the doctor. However, the insurance that I have through my job is I can just go right down the street to see a doctor. So that's
Also, all his blood tests, everything is like right within a 5 mile radius for him, but for me it's 20 to 30 minutes. So but that may be more of a marketplace problem than it is an Orlando problem. That may be everywhere, but yeah, for me to go to the doctor, it's a hike.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, our second one is churches. And that may seem like an odd thing to have on a pros and cons list. But okay, so the pro is that there are a lot of churches in the area, but the con is if you are used to like the brick and mortar style churches, you know, like where we've lived in the South most of our life, and there's always been like, you know, a billion Baptist churches and some Methodist churches and Episcopalian and all kinds of different types of denominations throughout. And there you could throw a rock and there'd be another church. Well, here where we live, there's not many denomination type of churches. They're all non-denominational, and they meet in school buildings or like some other place where they've been allowed to like lease a spot. And they're great churches, and we're members of one of them. But before, we had a lot of options that were like Southern Baptist, Methodist, things like that. We don't really have that here. We would have to drive 30 minutes to get into that type of like old school church building. So if you're like more comfortable with that, then it may be a little bit of an adjustment for you to get used to like meeting in a school building.
That's right.
But other than that, it is really great, and we love our church that we have here. So
That's right. All right. So number 3, the pros and cons is the weather. The average temperature in Orlando is 72 degrees. The average high temperature, the average low temperature is 52. So the winters here are pretty good. We barely have any days that are the highs are lower than the 50s or the high 40s, and very few of those. So we're really good. That's really good for us because we're kind of cold-natured people. We don't like cold weather. So
that's right.
So anyway,
we love the warmer, mild temperatures in the winter. And this year we never even turned our heat on. It never even got cold enough for that.
Yeah, and it does get pretty hot in the summer here, with temps often going over 90 degrees, sometimes over 100. Heat index up to around 105, a lot of times 110 sometimes. So it's a pro if you love warm weather and hot weather. It's a con if you don't. So a con is that being located in Florida is also susceptible to hurricanes. Hurricane season starts June the 1st and ends November 30th, I think. The really active time in this area is late August to probably early October. That's when we get most of those in this area. So, but that would be a con. But a pro for that is that Orlando is situated kind of in the middle of the landmass that we call Florida.
Yep.
And it's kind of located in the middle. And so once a hurricane makes landfall, it usually has some time to kind of weaken before it actually before the eyewall and the major winds and stuff gets to this area. Now, last year before, we did go through it came on, I think, shore as a Category 4, and when it got to us, it was still a Category 2, but it didn't really do any damage in our area, so that was pretty good.
Yeah, they say, though, from what we've heard from a lot of people, that is like super rare for it to even be a 2 normally. And they say that is one of the reasons why Walt Disney thought about using Orlando for Disney World. And I don't know that that's a fact. I'm just saying a lot of people say that was one of his considerations, was that the weather would be good most of the time,
Yep.
all year around, and the chance of a hurricane actually hitting them would be pretty rare.
That's right.
So that's one of the reasons why the area of Orlando is just at a perfect spot that it would be unusual for them to get a lot of hurricane damage.
That's right.
And that brings us to our fourth one in this section, which is wildlife. You might be thinking, what's the pro or con there? Well, the pro is that there is some great wildlife here. There's obviously tons of sea life. There's places where you can go to see manatees, dolphins, all that type of thing. There's also outrageous amount of birds in the area. The sandhill crane will walk down your streets. They're everywhere.
Yeah, you have to make friends with them because they're everywhere.
The con for the sandhill cranes is that they will literally stand in the middle of the road and move when they're ready.
That's right.
And so everybody will just be sitting there in their car waiting for them to move on.
Yep.
Also, when they're mating, they make some pretty interesting sounds out there.
Yep.
And they will literally walk past your house, down any of the subdivisions. They can fly, so they can like fly into your subdivision and like.
Yep.
So there's no like blocking them out of your subdivision with a gate or something.
Yeah.
So they can be a con just because they're like in the middle of the road, but they're fun to watch. Like, and they don't care about you.
No.
So you can walk right past them and they will never pay any attention to you.
Yep.
But another one, and one that most people don't realize, is that there are bears in this area. And there's some other kind of wildlife like that. Like I came across a bobcat. I came across a bobcat one day. He did watch me to make sure that I was not following him. He did not have to worry about that. I wasn't gonna. But obviously the biggest pro and con wildlife creature in this area that you will hear the most about in this area, because there's a lot of them, is alligators.
Yep.
And they're not just like, at Gatorland, which is an attraction in Orlando. No. They're in your ponds, they're in your lakes. You have to be really aware of them, because you might be out walking down the sidewalk passing a pond, and a gator might have decided to come up on the sidewalk and start sunning.
Yep.
So if you're not watching what you're doing, you might walk right up on them. His boss told him when we moved here, this is what you need, a phrase that you need to remember in case you come across a gator.
Zigzag. Run in the zigzag motion, because they can't.
They can. So you'll leave them behind because you can. But anyway, but it is fun, like when we know where a gator might be and we're able to like video them and stuff like that. It's a very common thing in Celebration, Florida, to see people at the what is that?
Lake Reinhardt.
Like Lake Reinhardt, standing there actually filming a gator that's just swimming around in there. Yeah. So it's not unusual to see them, and so they're really kind of cool as long as they're at a distance.
Yep.
All right, so again, we want to thank Dawn from Sensible Living with Money Mom for coming up with this topic, and we will again put the link down in the description so that you can go check out what it's like in Dallas-Fort Worth.
That's right, and tell us some of the pros and cons of living in the area where you live down in the comments below. We love to hear that. We're going to put a video up right here that you can click. After we say the thing we always say. That's going to do it for the long run. I'm Joel.
And I'm Christine.
Don't forget it's a long run. Give yourself a little grace.
Bye.